Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Boxing Along the Beltway. Our news and notes for this week, and more notes this week than news, as we have pretty much covered what's going on the rest of April. We're not going to recap the entire card that we have on this weekend. Both the cards for Saturday, April 30th are on the blog, Boxing Along the Beltway. I do have some comments about that. We'll get to that in just a moment. But, of course, Saturday, April 30th, the pro show will be the DC Army. That's the Mayweather Promotions card, the doubleheader, super middleweight championship doubleheader that features Lucien Boutte taking on, trying to challenge Badou Jack for the WBC super middleweight championship. And, of course, Rogelio Medina trying to challenge James DeGale for the IBF crown. So we're going to talk about that in just a few moments, but that's basically the card there. Now, the card gets underway at 5:45 p.m. Eastern time from the DC Army. Doors open at 5, and it'll be a 5:45 start. The Showtime broadcast, which features the doubleheader super middleweight championships, will begin at 10 o'clock Eastern time from the DC Army. We'll be trying to do our best to do some podcasting of some interviews maybe, and also of course, we'll be blogging throughout the night on boxonthebeltway.blogspot.com and on proamfighttalk.blogspot.com, proamfighttalk.blogspot.com throughout the evening. Now, on that very same night, we'll try to give you updates on this as best we can. Thomas Top Dog Williams will be on the card, and it should be a televised portion of the card on the Fox network, and that'll be from the StubHub Center in Carson, California. That's the undercard of, actually, the co-feature of Victor Ortiz and Andre Berto 2. And that'll be again from the StubHub Center in Carson, California. And Thomas Top Dog Williams will take on Edwin La Bamba Rodriguez in the 10-round co-feature bout there. And that'll be on Fox Network beginning at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So you can get a chance to see actually both shows throughout the evening. Should be a lot of fun with there as well. But Fox Network will have the Thomas Williams Jr. taking on Edwin La Bamba Rodriguez. And also in the undercard, Phil Jackson Benson is on that undercard there. So we'll get a chance to not see him, but of course we'll hear about what he is doing throughout that evening as well. So that's Saturday night, April 30th, at the StubHub Center in Carson, California. Now, the night before then, of course, on Friday night, April 29th, this card will be taking place at the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Now, we don't have any Beltway boxers in the televised portion of the card, at least not to my knowledge anyway, not scheduled. But this is one where the Durrell brothers, Anthony and Andre, are fighting on the televised portion of the card on the PBC on Spike TV. And the Andre Durrell, Blake Capriello fight, that was the bout that was scheduled to take place here at the Eagle Bank Arena at George Mason University. And Andre Durrell was injured in that bout prior to that bout, and the bout was canceled and replaced by the Pritchard Colon Terrell Williams bout at the Eagle Bank Arena on the undercard of Lamont Peterson and Felix Diaz. So we'll have some more about that as well. But that's going to be on the card. Now, we have a number of Beltway boxers scheduled to be on that card. That list is on the blog as well. But the likes of Luther Lights Out Smith, whose opponent has changed. It was scheduled to be a guy by the name of Mark Rideout, who is 4-0-1. Well, that bout, for whatever reason, did not take place. So Luther Smith is now facing a guy named Solomon Maye, who is out of New Haven, Connecticut, and he's 1-5-1. So although this is the first bout away from home for Luther Lights Out Smith, on the surface, it doesn't look like it's going to be a hard bout for Luther, as he's facing a guy who's 1-5-1. I believe he's been knocked out in his last couple of bouts. So that'll be an interesting situation there. Juan the Savior Rodriguez is on this card. He has a interesting opponent as well, and again, he'll be on the blog, so he'll be there. He's had a real tough time as of late with some tough bouts. His last loss was to Yuri Polishuk at the Renaissance Mayflower Hotel on that somewhat secretive card that an organization puts together every year that is unavailable to fans and to press. So we haven't been able to go to that, but the bouts count on the records, and last year Paulo Schuck beat Juan the Savior Rodriguez. Also in the card, Orlando Pugh is in the heavyweight bout. That's one against Brendan Barrett out of Little Egg Harbor, New Jersey. That's that tough guy, that brutal Brendan Bennett, 3-0-2 with 3 knockouts. So he'll be on that show. Jesse Singletary, welterweight out of DC, looking for his first win. He's 0-1. He's a middleweight, and he lost to Jerome Featherstone in his pro debut. He's on the card as well. And another gentleman whose name escapes me right now, he is from Frederick, Maryland, by way of Texas. Fights for the first time as a Beltway boxer. He trains in Frederick. Donnell Grove, I believe it is on that card. So that's Friday, April 29th from the Taj Mahal in Lang City, New Jersey. Now let's get back to April 30th at the DC Armory. Now, I have some interesting comments about this card. As I said last week, this card will be primarily for the hardcore boxing fan, and maybe we'll get some fans who will travel in from any part of the world, because everybody on this card, there's not an American on the major portion of this card, which is, I find pretty interesting, actually. You look at Lucien Boutte. He's from Canada by way of Romania. You've got Badou Jack, who's probably the closest one to that, but I believe he fights out of Las Vegas, but he's originally not from the United States. Rogelio Medina is from Mexico. James DeGale is from London, England. So you got 4 guys who aren't American, who will be in this situation. But that's not the real issue here, really. Really, that isn't the issue, because I think these 2 bouts will be outstanding. I'm looking forward to them. 2 good, solid super middleweight bouts, and if everything goes according to plan, the winners of these bouts will meet each other to unify the titles. So that is a lot at stake there, and I think that's one good point about this card. The only issue I have, again, as I usually do in situations like this, is that there's not a real Beltway presence on this card, and that is going to be an issue. And it really isn't, in this case, it's not the promoter's fault. It's not Mayweather's fault. The fact of the matter is this, folks. There's nobody left right now. There's nobody available. I mean, we've had all our top prospects between latter part of February up to this point have been busy. Everybody from Mike Reed, Kevin Rivers Jr., Lamont Roach Jr., Demetrius Ballard. Everybody's busy. Damon Nicholson was busy. Patrick Harris has been busy. I mean, they've all fought between the end of February, middle of February, really, and the end of this month, end of April. And there's nobody left. And that's just the bottom line of this. There's just nobody left. Darnell Pierce, I meant to say, is the Frederick, Maryland cruiserweight. Darnell Pierce, he's the guy from Texas who is going to be fighting on the card April 29th at the Taj Mahal. So thank you for a fan who brought that up to my attention. But that's the issue. There's nobody there. There's nobody available. So we have a number of boxers who, fortunately for them, 2 of them did not get knocked out the last time they were in action, so they were able to go again. But they're opponents, okay? Then you have, and let me say who they are. That's Samuel Amuoko, who last fought Mike Reed, and won it and lost a 6-round unanimous decision. You have Joshua Okine, who lost on the card April 1st here at the Army, the Adrian Bronner card, lost to Darnell Nicholson. But Damon Nicholson, I don't know why I'm calling him Darnell. Damon Nicholson, excuse me. But Okine was the first and only boxer to take Damon Nicholson the distance. So he's still ready to go. So he's on this card. And you've got a number of other boxers who have been in this area, like Keaton Grove. He's making his pro debut, the Sandman, making his pro debut. He trained a lot of the old school boxing gym as an amateur. He makes his pro debut on this card, taking on another guy who was on the April 1st card, Anthony Mpunie, who lost by decision to Gerald Tucker in the opening bout on the Adrian Bronner card. So you've got all these people, and then you have Latondria Jones, who is originally from D.C., as I said last week, but she moved to South Carolina when she was 8 years old, now fights out of the Mayweather gym. So the connections to the Beltway are rather raw in this case. There's not a whole lot that our Beltway fans know a lot about. And that may hurt the attendance in this bout. This card, as I said last week, is for the hardcore boxing fan. It is not really for the casual fan. And I seriously doubt it's going to draw the numbers that Adrian Bronner, Ashley Theophane drew. I'm not even sure it's going to reach the numbers that Tony Thompson and Luis Ortiz drew in March, on March 5th, because that was a good draw. That was 3,800. And then, of course, we went past that, way past that, actually, for Adrian Bronner, Ashley Theophane, and the number of Beltway boxers that were on that card. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. But again, it's a good card. If you're a boxing fan, you like good boxing, you have two title bouts in your own backyard featuring a division that's really revamped itself over the last year or so, with people moving out of the division, people like Andre Ward moving up to 175, and people retiring, Mikhail Kessler and some other 168ers that have retired over the last few years. And now you've got four legitimate 168 pound boxers, and both bouts, according to what people are telling and people are saying around the boxing world, are pick'em bouts. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. So hopefully you'll come out and definitely pack the DC Army best you can, and it should be a lot of fun on Saturday, April 30th at the DC Armory for the super middleweight doubleheader. Now, on the amateur side, of course, those of you who like amateurs, again, we've got the Regional Golden Gloves coming up at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. That's on Saturday, April 30th as well. And some, as we talked about last week, some good bouts there. Tavon Body taking on Troy Isley. That's going to be a great bout. You've got Tariq Irby in a good bout as well in the open division. So that should be a lot of fun coming up Saturday, April 30th at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. Quick look into May. Now, the May 13th card, Friday, May 13th at the DC Army. That's the Dusty Hernandez Harrison bout, taking on Mike Dallas Jr. We don't know much more about that card as of yet. So we're still looking for information about where that card is. As far as the May 13th card, tickets are on sale for that, though. So that's the card, and the main event, Dusty Harrison and Mike Dallas Jr. be televised by BET. Now, Saturday, May 14th at the Maryland State Fairgrounds in Timonium. We've talked about already Terrell Samuel versus Joshua Dynamite Davis, Terrell the Showshocker Samuel versus Dynamite Davis for the Maryland State Super Featherweight Championship. Travis Reeves versus Larry Pryor for the Maryland State Light Heavyweight Championship. And now comes word of this one. And this is going to be interesting. Now, you remember when this card first was announced, one of the bouts that was originally scheduled for the card was James Keeping Sleeping Stevenson taking on Cecil McCullough. Now, we know by now that bout is not going to take place. We understand that. But there's a bout that's not for a Maryland title that I think could be equally as interesting, if not more so in some cases. One thing for certain, it will be a battle. There's no question about that. And that is a bout between, it is announced this week, James Keep 'em Sleeping Stevenson will be on the card, and he will take on Kevin the Scarecrow Womack. And I think that is going to be an outstanding bout, if the right Kevin Womack shows up. Okay? Kevin Womack does not have the best of records, but there has not been a busier fighter in this area probably since the early days of people like Scott Sigmund and Jesse the Beast Niccolo, who seemed to be fighting almost every other month, it seemed, at one point. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in that situation, because that will be an interesting one. Kevin Scarecrow Womack does have decent power. One of the issues I've always had about Womack is he tends to fight so defensively, in the sense that when he does get hit by a punch, it looks like he's getting hit harder than he may actually be. And that has been a problem. I've seen a couple of his bouts where he has lost bouts primarily because of that, because he's given the judges images that make people believe he is getting hurt worse than he actually is. James Stevenson is going to come forward, and he's going to show the power in that situation. That could be a fun fight to watch. It definitely. I got to say, this has the makings, in all seriousness, of a card of the year situation. It really does. It could be an outstanding situation. So we'll see what happens on Saturday, May 14th at the Maryland State Fairgrounds in Timonium, Maryland. Now we're hearing that May is going to be a pretty busy month. We're seeing, because not only do we have May 13th at the DC Armory, May 14th at the Maryland State Fairgrounds in Timonium, but now comes word, and this is preliminary word, that May 21st, which is also a Saturday, we'll be back at the ABC Sports Complex in Springfield, Virginia, for a Left Hook LLC card. And that's Scott Farmer. Ooh. And, right. And, also, okay, that my daughter Courtney's entered the Beltway Boxing Stronghold and saying hi. So thank you, Courtney. Appreciate it.
Says 16.
No, you're not 16 yet. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. That's my daughter coming in saying hi. But, on Saturday, May 21st, there's a Left Hook LLC card. That's Scott Farmer out of Manassas, Virginia, the Manassas Mall, as we used to call him back in the day. And his son, Andrew the Dewman Farmer, looks to be coming back. We'll get a preliminary report on that, hopefully by the middle of next week or so, and we'll tell you what's on that card. So that should be a lot of fun. We have a number of guys fighting in the area in the month of May, going into June as well. June 4th, we're back at the ABC Sports Complex for a Jetta Promotions card. So we continue to pick up. No question about that. No, continuing to pick up. So a lot going on. That's pretty much the schedule. Now let me break down a couple of things real quick. I want to go back to what I said about the lack of Beltway presence on that card on April 3rd, because one thing I did forget, and I wanted to compare it to a night, one of the worst nights in, I think, Beltway boxing history. April of 2007. There was a card at the DC Armory that was done by a promoter named Ron Remus, alongside Carlos Linares Productions. And it was at the DC Armory. It was a televised card by ESPN. And the card had two Beltway boxers on the entire card. One of them was Larry the Gladiator Brothers, who many of you may remember was he wasn't even a gatekeeper, really. I mean, he was a guy that sometimes could be tough, but he's one of those guys that he was tough, but you knew he was there to survive primarily. Now, ironically, that was one of his last wins was on that card. And there was one other boxer on the card, Beltway boxer, whose name escapes me at the moment, but it wasn't anybody of real significance. The rest of the card featured guys like Mike Anchado, and Vernon Paris was on that card. I remember that. And the card was horrible. I mean, every way that a card could fail, it failed. And I did something that night that I've never done to any outside promoter. But I actually saw Ron Remus on the subway after that card. And I looked him dead in the face and I said, don't ever bring a card here in this area without some Beltway boxers. And that was a time when Beltway boxers were available. Okay, that's why I'm making the distinction, because it's a totally different situation now. We don't have anybody available of any significance to fight right at this point. Not on April 30th. But at that time in 2007, we had people available, okay, to fight. Could have brought in some folks from Baltimore. We had people we could have brought some people in from Virginia. We had people available. And they decided to do this card with no one of any real significance on this card from the Beltway. And that was just pathetic. And they never did a card here again. You know, Ron Remus, Carlos Linares, they never did a card here again. And they complained about the fans. I told them it wasn't the fans' fault. You didn't bring anybody they wanted to see or anybody that they knew. Now that next month, May, back at the DC Army, back on ESPN, that was one of the first Headbangers cards, and the main events were the Peterson brothers. You know, and they packed the place. Great card, two great bouts. Anthony actually was the main event that night on that card. He was in the featured bout, and it was a great night, no question about that. So I think this case, like I said, I think this is a different situation. But I just wanted to bring up that anytime you do not put in a local boxer in this area, now I'm not speaking for any other area in the country, but in this area, which has been known for trying to build up and put out their own talent and publicize their own talent, you cannot bring in a card that does not do that. Simple as that. You cannot do that. But I think in this case, Mayweather gets sort of a pass because there isn't anybody available right now. So we'll have to wait and see. I want to talk a postscript real quick about Triple G and Dominique Wade. And I've been on social media getting into verbal arguments with folks about whether or not Wade should have taken this bout. And I stand by the very first thing I said about this card, about this bout, when this bout was announced right here on Boxing on the Beltway Google app for Android. It is still a no-lose situation for Dominique Wade. Now, a lot of people, and this is what bugs me. I put this out on Facebook, so if you have me on Facebook, you know where I'm going with this. I don't understand, number one, how people are criticizing Dominique Wade for taking the bout, and also criticizing Triple G for taking the bout. That makes absolutely, positively no sense to me whatsoever. Wade is 26 years old. He's 18-1 now with 12 KOs. There is no guarantee that he would have ever gotten a shot at this situation. People say, well, if he worked hard, he would have kept going. He would have been, and that may have been fine. But the landscape of the middleweight division probably would have changed. Okay? Number one. Number two. Reportedly, Wade made somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000, $600,000 for this bout. For a guy that's 18-0 and 26 years old, that's probably more money that a similar boxer of that caliber would have made in one night than a similar boxer would have made in 5 years. You have to take it. And people forget sometimes that this sport and this business is sometimes called prize fighting. And that was a prize. That was a prize. Now, again, we knew, and the smart money said that Wade was not ready for that. And he wasn't. And it showed. There's no question it showed. But you cannot. I just cannot believe people are criticizing him for taking that bout, saying he should have given that bout up. Why? Especially when you look at it from the Triple G end, and he's being criticized for taking the bout when the WBO champion, Billy Joe Saunders, decided he didn't want the bout that time. And then as soon as Wade signed for the bout, then all of a sudden, I would have fought him. I would have fought him. No, you wouldn't have. You didn't. You had the opportunity and you didn't. And that's an issue. And he needs to look, and Billy Joe Saunders needs to look at himself. And the boxing world needs to look at Billy Joe Saunders and say, you had an opportunity to do this. Why didn't you do it? I'm a big Triple G fan. I mean, I was a fan going in. I'm a fan coming after the bout. I think he handled himself very well. He's one of the best in the country, in the world right now. You can make an argument whether or not he's better than Chocolatito Gonzalez, who fought on the same card and looked good. But I thought McWilliams Arroyo fought him very well that night. But how do you complain? How do you criticize Dominic Wade for taking that bout? That's ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm just befuddled by that. And people have tried to explain, well, he won't be the same boxer he was. Maybe not. Maybe he will have learned something from this, known how to get to the get towards the Triple G level and become a better boxer because of it. That's my bet, that he will do that. And his trainers will learn how to do that on their end as well. Once Triple G decides to do whatever he's going to do, whether he fights Canelo, whether he fights Billy Joe Saunders, whether he fights Andre Ward, somewhere along the line there's going to be a gap in that middleweight division. And Dominic Wade, his goal right now, needs to position himself to fill that gap in the middleweight division. I believe he can do it. The Dominic Wade that I have known over the years, and I've known Dominic for a while now, it's a better Dominic than it used to be. And here's what I mean by that. There's been a lot of criticism. I've said this before. There's been a lot of criticism for Dominic Wade over the years for a lack of focus. The fact that you can debate whether or not he beat Sam Solomon, that's all fine and good. But the fact of the matter is that he got the W out of that. And he wouldn't have gotten a W out of that one if he had lost any focus. So the focus is there, in my opinion. You know, much different than what that maybe comes from age. That may be the case, but you know, he's a guy that's had all the talent. Does he need to work on some things? Of course he does. I think one of the things we realize, and again, this may be because Triple G is such an outstanding talent. I think the one thing that we can question at the moment is the power. Whether that power is there against the elite competition in the middleweight division. Now, we'll know that better once he faces somebody that's a lot less than Triple G is. Okay, we'll figure that out one way or the other. But again, you cannot criticize it. I don't see it. I'm lost on that. I don't see how you criticize Dominic Wade for taking that bout. You have to take that bout. That's a golden opportunity that may never come again. Right now, even after he pays his trainers and management, and Al Heyman takes whatever cut he takes out of this, he still have enough really to do some good work with his family. And again, this is a prize fighting. And he did get a prize. It may have been the consolation prize, but he got a prize for facing and standing up to and trying to beat Gennady Golovkin. That's just that simple. One other note, there continues to be, and I want to thank Mark Londo, who is a writer for Inside Boxing, is a freelance boxing writer, does a lot of other things. I want to thank him for keeping the Pritchard Colon story active. For those who don't know what the Pritchard Colon, you should know, but for those who don't know, Pritchard Colon fought on October 17th at the Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia, again on the co-feature of Lauren Peterson and Felix Diaz. And of course, we had the major issues with Colon getting hit in the back of the head, and he's been in a coma ever since October 17th. And the World Boxing Council has come out with what they call the Pritchard Colon rule, which means basically, I don't really understand. I mean, I understand sort of the gist, but I just want to kind of having a hard time kind of summarizing. But basically, they're going to take a better look at some of these rabbit punches. And ironically, I saw one of the people that's fighting. I believe he's on the April 30th card. Yeah, it is. It's Sharif Lion Boguer. His last bout, he's on the April 30th card at the DC Army. And his last bout was a no contest in the second round because he hit his opponent in the back of the head and he couldn't continue. This was down in Mexico. And you wonder, and when I saw the video of that, it made me just shudder to think about what has gone on with Pritchard Colon. The fact that Terrell Williams, his opponent, was known for doing exactly that. And he had been caught a few times and penalized, losing points for doing that prior to the bout against Pritchard Colon. There's been a lot of issues with referee Joe Cooper. And one of the things we'll be looking for on April 30th is whether or not Joe Cooper will work the card in DC. He did not work the last card, April 1st. He was there, but he did not work the card. That was Billy Johnson, Michelle Myers for the undercard bouts, and I think both did an outstanding job. They really did. Cooper has not worked in Virginia, and we've had a card there, and the word is, this is from Mark Londo, that he will never work in Virginia again. At least not, I won't say again, but he will not work for Virginia for the time being. Let me say that. Whether that holds true with DC, we do not know. We may find out on Saturday about that situation. From what I'm hearing, and that's again from Mark Londo's outstanding reporting, that DC is still looking at the situation. Let me say something about DC Commission. In the past with other people, and remember, I go back with this commission all the way back to the days of Core Masters Berry. When I first started really working with the boxing in this area, we had people the likes of Jeffrey Gildenhorn, who was an outstanding businessman. I think he owned Giant at one time, or was one of the owners. No, he was not one of the owners of Giant, but he did own a restaurant here in the area. Berto Jefferson, who was the former fire chief here in D.C., was head of the commission. Of course, for many years, the late Arnold McKnight was head of the commission. He was the longest tenured. We had Jason Turner, who's probably better known as one of the husbands of the Real Housewives of D.C., and I believe after that, he and his wife did break up. And of course, the great work Scotty Irving did, who really kind of settled the ship after the passing of McKnight, and Jason Turner just didn't work out very well, unfortunately. But Scotty Irving came in and he righted the ship. He really did. He got things settled, and of course the great work I thought they did overall with the Peterson Khan fight had a lot to do with that. And now we're under the auspices of Adam Weirs and his group, who seem to be a very proactive group in this city. They definitely worked in the situation involving Lloyd Scaife. And there's a nice article that someone wrote about the Lloyd. Oh, I know it was David Greisman. He wrote an article about Lloyd Scaife, and he did quote me on that situation, and it was what I suspected, that Lloyd Scaife was tired of doing this. And I think it just showed, he showed very little interest. And, Lloyd Scaife, I've known him for years, had never had the most expressive face in the world. He's very, very stone-faced at times. But seeing him briefly at that show March 5th, that was of course, for those who don't know, let me set the scene for those who don't know. In the main event of that card, which was Luis Ortiz knocking out Tony Thompson in the 5th round, the two other judges that worked that night, Tammy Jenkins and Paul Wallace, both had Luis Ortiz pitching a shutout, 60-53, going into the 6th round. Well, despite 2 knockdowns, Lloyd Scaife had Ortiz winning only by 1 point. And there were a lot of things going into play with that. I think age was a factor. And even Lloyd Scaife said there's been some issues with him being up in age right now. He's been doing this for 30-some years. And as I told David Greisman in the article, I'd never seen Lloyd Scaife have a bad card like that. You can question any judge's card, but it was just weird. It was just a weird situation. And again, as I said earlier, I didn't even think to look at the scorecard because it didn't mean anything because Ortiz knocked Thompson out. But looking back at that was really weird. So Lloyd Scaife has retired from judging, and that's it for them. And again, the DC Commission has been very proactive on that. I think they're taking some good moves and really looking at the situation with Joe Cooper and to a lesser extent the Pritchard Cologne situation, but they watch that closely because not only does Joe Cooper work in DC, for many years he was the supervisor of the referees in the District of Columbia. So you had those situations as well. So it's one of those things that they had to look into, and I applaud this new commission for being very proactive, and they're trying to move forward, no question about that. So, but again, Mark Londo's done an outstanding job with keeping this in the forefront of the boxing media, and I think he's done an outstanding job with that. Finally today, I want to send out some tributes, and one has nothing to do with boxing, the other really does, and I'm going to start with the non-boxing one first. For those who do not know, one of my other side jobs, so to speak, and has been for the past 22 years, I've been the public address announcer for the men's and women's basketball team at Coppin State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And to say I've had some outstanding times. And the next year, by the way, will be my 30th anniversary as a public address announcer. I did 7 years at Howard University prior to that, and I've done a lot of different events over the years. I had the pleasure of this year doing the Baltimore City Public School Championships, Public High School Basketball Championships, and Boys Championships. I've done number of track meets over the years, the Howard Relays and Special Olympics. I did that for 10 years in DC, and recently did the Nike Global Challenge for 3 years, seeing some of the best high school turned college now. Many of them turned pro, the likes of Austin Rivers, Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, just to name a few of the players who are now in the pros, and I had a chance to see them as high school players. Grayson Allen was another one who's at Duke and been an outstanding player for Duke Blue Devils. If he can't stop tripping people on purpose, he'd be a more outstanding player, but had a chance to see him as well. So I've been very blessed as a public address announcer over the years, and no better than the 22 years I've spent thus far at Coppin State University. I had a chance to call, I think I've called 4 MEAC championship teams on the men's side and 3 on the women's side. And a man who was a major part of just about all those championships is a man by the name of Derek Brown. And Derek Brown has worked with Coppin State now for 30 years. And just this past week, he announced his retirement. And you couldn't find a classier person in the game of college basketball than Derek Brown. Now, let me just tell a brief story about Derek. Derek started out, Coach Brown started as an assistant coach to the legendary Coppin State coach, Ron Fang Mitchell. And many people know Coppin State because of a day in March in 1997 when Coppin State became the first number 15 seed to win over number 2 seed in the 60-14 version of the NCAA tournament. They beat South Carolina University of South Carolina, who was ranked number 6 in the nation at that time. And what's special about that win is that many schools have done it since then. And Coppin's margin of victory is bigger than any other number 15 school to win over number 2 in the history of the 68 team NCAA tournament. They beat South Carolina University by 13 points. 78-65 was the final. They dominated the second half, especially the latter part of that second half. And Derek Brown was Fang's assistant that year. And it put Coppin State on the map. That's how many people know who and where Coppin State is. I knew about Coppin State way back in the late 70s because arguably the best player to ever come out of that university was a guy by the name of Joe Pace, who played a couple years in the NBA, played with the Bullets here in Washington, 1978, won an NBA title with them. He was not a star on the team, but he definitely was a member of that squad. But anyway, get back to Derek Brown. About 3 or 4 years later, the women's coach at the time at Coppin State, a woman by the name of Jenny Hall, just bolted. I mean, she one night on a trip, she bolted from the team. Period. She definitely did. She bolted from the team, and of course, she was fired. Now, the athletic director at that time was Fang Mitchell, and he called upon his right hand man, who he's known since the days when they coached together at Gloucester Community College in New Jersey. Called on Derek Brown and said, would you take over the women's program? Now, at that time, Derek would coach the women's team one night, then have to fly the next day to a men's game. And then fly back for a women's game maybe 2 days later. He was going all over the place. And plus, at that same time, he was also the softball coach at Coppin State. So eventually, Brown was able to focus on just the women's team. And when that happened, everything just turned around for the women's program at Coppin State, almost similarly to what the men would do. The only thing the women didn't do that the men did was win an NCAA tournament game. Other than that, it was just like the women's program. They won 3 MEAC titles. No, I'm sorry. They won, 3 MEAC titles, 5 regular season championships. They had 5 players named the player of the year. He was named coach of the year twice. They went to the WNIT, became the first HBCU, historically black college and university, to win a game in the women's NIT. And he had some of the best teams that I've ever seen in women's basketball at that level. And players like Rashida Subers, Shalimar Oakley, the best, those two were the best backcourt combination in the history of the conference that Coppin is in, the Mideast Athletic Conference. And I've been following that conference almost since its inception, but definitely since the late 70s. I've followed that conference, and no backcourt combination was better than Shalimar Oakley and Rashida Subers, both players of the year at one time. Back-to-back players of the year, as a matter of fact. Keisha Brooks, Sherry Tucker just went into the Coppin State Hall of Fame. I mean, this was a tremendous tremendous program. And he's a first-class human being. I mean, that's just bottom line. He's a first-class human being. We're going to miss him on that sideline this coming year. Outstanding person. And I just wanted to pay tribute to him and wish him well in his retirement. He deserves it. But he has. I've always said that the facility at Coppin State University either should be named for Fang Mitchell and Derek Brown. That may not happen as far as the Fang Mitchell situation because Fang was fired by the university. But I think it should happen. At the very least, the court itself should be named after both of them because those two are the reasons why that the new facility, relatively new facility, which is now about 7 years old now, exists right now. There's no question about that in my mind. So we'll see what happens. And best wishes to Derek Brown. The other person I want to pay tribute to is a guy that is involved in boxing. He has been in the Beltway for off and on for a number of years, but he makes his home in North Carolina. Recently, he was inducted into the Carolinas Boxing Hall of Fame. And you talk about a first-class individual, they come no better than Bill Clancy. Now, one of the great things about boxing is not only do you meet great people from your own area that you know, and you know them, and you have that reputation with them, but you meet some great people from around the country. And two of my people that I consider friends in this business are two great referees. One of them is Steve Smoger, Double S Steve Smoger, the Hall of Famer, the International Boxing Hall of Famer, and he and I get along so well when we see each other. He's come through Virginia a number of times. And the other is Bill Clancy. I met Bill Clancy in the mid to late 90s. I did a show. I was doing Boxing Spotlight, and I did couple shows. We did a couple of shows from the Ritz nightclub in Raleigh, North Carolina. And that's where I first met Bill Clancy. He was doing the majority of refereeing during that show. And, you know, I don't kid, but I've said some things about one aspect of North Carolina boxing. That's, of course, people that come from Wilson, North Carolina. But you could tell that the rest of the state was trying to do some good things. And when I went down there, this was the time James Bone Crusher Smith, the former world heavyweight champion, had just taken over as commissioner of the North Carolina Boxing, chair of the North Carolina Boxing Commission. So I had a chance to meet with him, talk to him, and he actually did some commentary on the boxing show with me. It's a lot of fun. Also, one of my favorite boxers of all time, and he passed away not too long ago, but I loved him. He's one of the judges down there. Many of you may remember a boxer by the name of Billy Costello. And he was one of the judges, and I had a fun time talking with him for a while too. And then I got a chance to meet Bill Clancy for the first time, and again, just a great guy. And watching him ref, you knew he was young, of course, and you knew he was going to do some good things as a referee. And he has done some fantastic things over the years. He was supposed to be the referee for Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, but something came up and someone else got it. But he did do a Manny Pacquiao bout on that same card, which is a world title bout. In this area, he's been in this area a number of times. He's refereed Jimmy Lang, Tony Jetta, the second bout between the two. Now, the first one was done by Steve Smoger, the second by Bill Clancy. He refereed bouts in Baltimore, and I don't think he's ever done D.C., but he's done Maryland and Virginia a number of times over the years. And again, we get together and we just have a lot of fun talking to each other. And when I heard he was being inducted into the Carolina's Boxing Hall of Fame, I think it's doing North and South Carolina. I was so happy, and could not happen to a better guy. Could not happen to a more classier guy than Bill Clancy. And I'm so proud. I hope he comes back into the area very, very soon to work with us again. So just, again, you meet great people everywhere you go, and you just got to appreciate them. And I'm learning now with a lot of the great singers and other people who are leaving us right now, that you got to take the opportunity to really really congratulate them and thank them for all the things they do that make your life better. And that's definitely the case with both Derek Brown and Bill Clancy. So my tributes to them at this time. So hope to see you Saturday night, April 30th at the DC Armory. If you're an amateur fan, please go out and support the regional Golden Gloves coming up Saturday night at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. We have a big boxing weekend ahead of us. Make sure you get all the information right here on the Box Law and Beltway Google app for Android. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And always remember to keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Take care.